A Japanese urban legend. Two world-famous friends seeking anonymous adventure. Jungkook and Taehyung entered a decrepit abandoned school, drawn by the sinister story of Hanako-san. What was meant to be just a thrill-seeking venture turned into a plunge into darkness. The air grew cold, the silence grew heavy, and the feeling of being watched became undeniable. Strange whispers and movements in the shadows began to test not only their courage, but also their trust in each other. The fear was real, but there was something else in that decaying school, something more personal and unsettling than just a child's ghost. What did they truly find in the dark corridors of that forgotten place? And should some legends indeed remain untouched?
The Tokyo air was electric. I remember thinking it was like being inside a giant arcade, a chaotic symphony of flashing neon lights, the constant hum of the crowd, and that addictive smell of street food hanging on every corner. For me, Jungkook, it was more than a city. It was a breath of fresh air, an escape from the overwhelming routine of being who I was, rehearsals, recordings, stages, the endless cycle. Beside me, Taehyung, my friend, my bandmate, shared this feeling of freedom. His eyes, always so expressive, shone with an almost childlike curiosity as we soaked it all in. We had achieved the impossible. A few days off just for us. No cameras, no managers nearby, no expectations. We chose Japan, a place that had always seemed magical and distant, with masks covering half our faces and hats hiding our hair. We were just two anonymous guys, lost and awestruck in the vastness of Tokyo. Those first few days were normal, in a way I barely remembered. We dove headfirst into the Shibuya crossing, letting ourselves be carried by the organized human wave. We found tiny ramen shops, the steam fogging up my glasses, the hot broth warming me from the inside as the autumn breeze blew outside. We visited silent temples, where the scent of incense and old wood seemed to cleanse the mind from the city's hustle. Taehyung was always with his vintage camera, clicking away relentlessly, capturing beauty in the most mundane details. I simply absorbed. I tried to etch into my memory the strange melody of Japanese spoken around me, the rough texture of washi paper in a small shop, the sweet, sticky taste of mochi we bought from a stall. They were simple, precious moments. We laughed at my frustrated attempts to eat with chopsticks thinner than I was used to. We argued passionately about which exotic Kit Kat flavor was superior. Above all, we enjoyed each other's presence. That easy camaraderie only years of sharing everything can build. Away from the spotlight, it was just us. One afternoon, the rain decided to trap us in a small cafe. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of rain hitting the pavement outside, creating a cozy and slightly melancholic atmosphere. We were flipping through guides and articles on the tablet, looking for our next adventure, when Taehyung stopped on a page. "Hey, Jungkook, check this out," he said, turning the screen towards me. The title mentioned something about Japanese urban legends, Hanako-san of the bathroom. Ever heard of her? I leaned in, my eyes scanning the text. The story was chilling. The ghost of a girl, killed in a school bathroom during the war, haunted the third stall of the girls' bathroom on the third floor. The ritual was specific. Knock 3 times. Ask, "Hanako-san, are you there?" If she answered, "Yes, I'm here," well, the consequences ranged from horrifying to terrifying. I felt a shiver run down my spine, despite the warmth of the coffee cup in my hands. "Creepy stuff," I murmured. But Taehyung's gaze was different. It wasn't fear I saw there, but fascination. Perhaps even a touch of challenge, creepy and intriguing. Just imagine. A legend so deeply rooted. He continued reading aloud. "They say there are tons of abandoned schools where people go to try their luck, see if they can find her." I frowned. The idea made my stomach knot. Try your luck with a vengeful spirit. Doesn't seem like the best idea, Tae. "Oh, come on, Kookie. Don't be such a scaredy cat," he teased. That mischievous grin I knew so well spreading across his face. "It's just a story, right? A legend. Think of the adventure. The two of us, exploring a haunted Japanese school. It'd be something to talk about." I have to admit, a part of me was tempted. The part that liked adrenaline, the unknown, the same part that made me jump off stages or try risky choreography. But the other part, the more sensible one, screamed that playing with the supernatural was stupid, even if it was just a story. I don't know, Taehyung. It seems kind of disrespectful, even dangerous. Dangerous. It's an old school, Kook. The worst we'll find there are giant cobwebs and maybe a rat or two, he scoffed, already searching frantically on his phone. Look, found one. A high school on the outskirts of a small town, a few hours by train, closed down about 20 years ago. Lots of people online say it's haunted, and they specifically mention Hanako-san. The temptation was like an itch, the idea of a secret just between us, an experience completely outside our world. The rain drumming on the window created the perfect soundtrack for ghost stories. I hesitated, my mind a battle between curiosity and fear. "Come on," he insisted, his big pleading eyes fixed on mine. "Just a quick look. We don't have to do anything stupid, just feel the vibe, for the story." I took a deep breath and finally gave in. I felt a heavy sigh escape me. "All right, but if things get even slightly weird, we turn around and leave. Promise?" "Promise!" Taehyung exclaimed, his smile triumphant. "It'll be fun." Fun. Little did I know. 2 days later, we were stepping off a train that had carried us through landscapes straight out of an anime, rice paddies stretching to the horizon. Small villages nestled in green valleys, and there it was, the school, on a hill. Half devoured by the vegetation that had reclaimed the land, it looked like an old carcass, its broken windows like empty sockets, the paint peeling like sunburnt skin. An iron gate, twisted by rust, hung lopsided, both inviting and repelling. The silence was almost palpable, broken only by the whistling wind and the ominous caw of a crow perched on a gnarled tree. Even with the sun shining, I felt a chill that didn't come from the air, the smell of damp earth, rotting leaves, and forgetfulness. "This is creepier in person than in the photos," I admitted, my voice almost a whisper. Taehyung, however, seemed to vibrate with the atmosphere. "It's perfect," he said, pushing open the gate, which groaned like a moan. "Let's go." We entered. Tall grass brushed against our pants, and the stone path was covered in slippery moss. The main door was ajar, a dark slit inviting us inside. I hesitated. The size of the building, its silent decay, everything felt heavy. "After you," I said, trying to inject a bravery I didn't feel into my voice. He chuckled and went in. I took a deep breath of the dust and humidity-laden air and followed him. The inside was a dark, silent labyrinth. Light struggled to enter through the dirty windows, creating shadows that seemed to move on their own in the corners of my vision. The wooden floor protested under our every step, the sound echoing eerily in the empty corridors. The smell was intense here. Mold, decades of dust, and something vaguely chemical, maybe from old cleaning supplies or something else. We explored the first few floors, classrooms frozen in time, with overturned desks and ghosts of equations on the blackboards, a gymnasium with a warped floor and rusting basketball hoops, a library that looked like it had been hit by a hurricane, books scattered like dead leaves. Everywhere you could feel the weight of memories, of the laughter and conversations that had once echoed there. I was getting increasingly tense. Every creaking floorboard, every dancing shadow made me jump. I felt watched, an irrational but persistent feeling. Taehyung, on the other hand, seemed to be genuinely enjoying himself. He wandered the halls, taking photos with his camera, pointing out macabre details with an enthusiasm that was starting to seem strange to me. "Look, Kook, drawings on the wall," he said, shining his phone light on some faded childish scribbles in a second-floor hallway. "Imagine how many kids passed through here." "I am imagining," I replied, swallowing hard. "And I'm imagining we should head straight to the 3rd floor, find this bathroom, and get out of here as fast as possible." We climbed the last staircase. The concrete steps were cold and worn. The 3rd floor was noticeably darker, colder. The smell of mold was stronger here, and now it mingled with a metallic acrid odor. Rust, maybe? Finally, at the end of a dimly lit corridor, we found it, the girls' bathroom. The sign was broken, but I recognized the silhouette. The door was ajar. "This is it," Taehyung whispered. His voice, for the first time, seemed to lose some of that carefree confidence. We pushed the door. The creak was long and mournful. The inside was horrid. Broken tiles, some missing, covered everything. The mirrors above the sinks were so filthy they barely reflected. And there they were, 3 stalls, their metal doors stained, rusted, covered in old graffiti. The smell here was particularly bad. Mold, dampness, and a penetrating odor of stagnant water, maybe sewage. It made me want to gag. "The 3rd stall," Taehyung reminded me, pointing to the last one in the row. It was closed. We moved forward slowly, the sound of our sneakers on the dirty floor seeming amplified. The silence became heavy, expectant. "So?" I asked, my voice caught in my throat. "Are you really going to do that?" Taehyung stopped in front of the door. For a moment he just stood there, staring at the rusted metal. The gleam in his eyes had changed. It wasn't fun anymore. It was intensity. He took a deep breath, the sound seeming to echo in the small space. "Yeah, we're already here." He raised his hand, hesitated for a fraction of a second, and then he knocked, 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was dry, loud, final. We waited. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Taehyung leaned in slightly. His voice came out a little shaky but audible. "Hanako-san, are you there?" Nothing. Just the whistle of the wind outside, somewhere through a broken window pane. I let out the breath I'd been holding, a wave of relief washing over me. I almost smiled. See? There's nothing. Just a stupid legend. Let's get out of here. But Taehyung didn't move. He kept staring at the closed door. Wait! That's when I heard it. A tiny sound, almost inaudible. A murmur. It seemed to come from the other side of the door. I couldn't make out the words, but there was no doubt. It was a voice. Shh! I'm here. Liquid ice seemed to pour down my spine. I grabbed Taehyung's arm hard without thinking. Did you hear that? Did you hear it? He nodded slowly, eyes wide, fixed on the door. I heard it. In that exact instant, the door of the first stall, the one closest to us, slammed shut with incredible violence. The metallic bang made us jump back, our hearts trying to beat out of our chests. Okay, that's enough, I yelled, pulling Taehyung's arm with all my strength. You promised. Let's go now. But he seemed rooted to the spot, his gaze locked on the third stall. But, she answered, Kook, she's really here. I don't care if she's here, in the hall, or making tea, I insisted, panic starting to bubble inside me. Let's go. And then, everything started to fall apart, a clear whisper, this time near the sinks behind us. It sounded like a little girl giggling softly, a sound that was both innocent and terribly wrong. The lights in the hallway flickered 2 or 3 times, and then, darkness. We were plunged into a thick gloom, broken only by the faint, dirty light coming from the bathroom window. The temperature dropped like a stone. I could see my own breath condensing in the cold, damp air, and that smell, rust, stagnant water, became almost physical, suffocating, emanating from the third stall. Taehyung, please, I begged, my voice trembling as much as my hands. He finally seemed to snap out of his stupor, but the expression on his face wasn't what I expected. There was no panic. There was calm, a strange, almost calculated calm, and in his eyes, a glint that looked amused. Calm down, Jungkook. It's just the atmosphere. It's playing tricks on us, he said, his voice level. Tricks! I almost yelled, incredulous. The door slammed shut. We heard voices. The lights went out. How can you be so calm? Taehyung gave a half smile, one that didn't warm his eyes. Maybe I just handle fear better than you do. He took a step sideways, moving away from me, walking towards the dark sinks. Or maybe there's really nothing to fear. I watched him, and a new kind of fear began to tighten its grip on my chest. A fear that didn't come from the dark or the sounds, but from him, my friend. He was acting so bizarrely, so detached. Where was the Tae who would have grabbed my hand just as tightly, who would share my terror? And then, he disappeared. I blinked, and he was no longer there, near the sinks. My blood ran cold. Taehyung, where are you? Stop it, this isn't funny. Silence, just my heart echoing in my ears, and the slow, unnerving drip of a faucet. I felt a touch, ice cold, on my shoulder. I screamed, a sharp, strangled sound, and whirled around. Taehyung was there, right behind me, that strange smile still on his face. Did I scare you? He asked, his voice soft. How the hell did you do that? I stammered, instinctively backing away. Where were you? Me? I've been here the whole time, he replied, tilting his head slightly. I think you're getting paranoid, Kook. The fear is messing with your head. But I knew I wasn't. He hadn't been there a second before. That sense of unreality intensified. The air seemed to vibrate with a sick energy. And the presence I felt, it no longer seemed like just a child's ghost. It was something else. Something focused on me. I felt trapped. Not just by the darkness, but by my best friend's eyes. We heard another sound. A slow, prolonged creak, the door to the third stall. It was opening, slowly, inward. We both turned. The opening revealed only darkness, total, impenetrable darkness. No ghost appeared, but the feeling of something malevolent lurking inside was almost palpable, physical. And then it started. The water. First, I heard a low gurgle coming from inside the dark stall. Then, I saw it. Dirty, brownish water. Seeping out from under the door, spreading across the broken floor. The level began to rise quickly. It wasn't just coming from the stall. It started overflowing from the sinks, bubbling up from the drains in the floor. The cold, filthy water began to soak my sneakers, my pants. The smell became unbearable. At the same time, a sound outside, a low rumble of thunder rolling in the distance. Then another, closer, louder. I looked at the dirty window and saw the sky darkening rapidly. A storm was breaking over us. Rain began to drum on the roof, then fall in torrents, lashing against the glass. We're trapped, I said, my voice choked with panic, the icy water already reaching my ankles, the hallway door. I ran to it, pounded my fists on the old wood. It wouldn't open. It was stuck, as if locked from the other side. Taehyung, help me. But he didn't move. He remained near the third stall, watching the water rise, his figure almost motionless in the gloom. intermittently lit by the lightning that now tore across the sky. His expression was unreadable. "It's no use, Jungkook," he said, his voice disturbingly calm. "I don't think she wants us to leave. Not yet." The water at our feet began to churn, not naturally. It bubbled and formed strange ripples right in front of the open stall. And then, something began to emerge, a dark smudge in the dirty water. Then, slowly it took shape. Delicate, small contours. Dark, long, tangled hair floating on the surface. A dress, red, torn and faded. It was her, Hanako-san, or something that looked like her. The figure was translucent, shimmering, like smoke on water, but it was there. Where the face should have been, there was only a dark shadow, a void. I was paralyzed. Absolute terror stole my breath, froze my muscles. It was real, worse than any story I had read. Her presence was a wave of cold, of pure malice that made me tremble from head to toe. I closed my eyes for an instant, expecting the scream, the hand grabbing me, being pulled into that watery darkness. But nothing happened. I opened my eyes. Hanako-san's figure wasn't moving towards me. She raised an arm. Slowly. A translucent arm. A small, pale hand that trembled, and she pointed. Not at me. She pointed at Taehyung. I frowned. Even in the midst of terror, confusion pricked at me. Why him? I followed the direction of the ghostly finger with my eyes. I looked at Taehyung. He was still standing there, almost serene, expectant. My gaze then dropped to the flooded floor. The surface of the dark, dirty water, illuminated in that instant by a blinding flash of lightning, became a mirror, a distorted, dark, horrific mirror. I saw my own reflection, pale, eyes wide with terror. I saw the reflection of Hanako's shimmering figure pointing, but where Taehyung's reflection should have been, it wasn't Taehyung. In his place, reflected in the filthy water, was another figure. It looked like a slightly older, darker version of Hanako herself, the same dark, straight hair, vague features, but where the mouth should have been, there was a smile, wide, malicious, cruel, a smile that seemed to savor my fear, and it was looking directly at me. Understanding hit me like a punch to the gut. The air left my lungs. It wasn't Taehyung. Maybe it had been when we arrived, but not anymore. That bizarre calm, the way he seemed amused by my fear, the sudden disappearances, the taunts. It wasn't my friend. It was that thing, that entity. It had used his face, our friendship, my trust, to bring me here, to corner me. The Hanako-san of the legend might be real, but the real monster was right here, in front of me, wearing my best friend's face like a mask, and the small apparition pointing. Was she the real victim, trying to warn me, or just another piece in this sick game? The thing wearing Taehyung's face tilted its head. The smile in the reflection seemed to widen. "Surprise, Cookie," said Taehyung's voice, but it sounded empty. Wrong, a grotesque imitation. Not as fun as you thought, huh? Shock gave way to pure survival instinct. I didn't think, I just acted. I looked away from that hideous reflection and threw myself at the dirty bathroom window. The glass exploded outward with a deafening crash. I felt the sharp pain of shards cutting my hand. My arm but barely registered it. I propelled myself through the narrow opening and fell awkwardly onto the sloping roof of the floor below. The tiles, wet from the storm, made me slip. I didn't look back. I heard a sound from the bathroom. I don't know if it was a scream of rage or an icy laugh, but I didn't stop. Sliding, stumbling, I reached the edge of the roof and jumped. The fall onto the muddy ground seemed to rattle every bone in my body. I scrambled to my feet. My ankle screamed in pain. I felt warm blood trickling down my arm, but I ignored it all. I ran away from that cursed building, shot past the rusty gate like a bolt, ran down the deserted road as the rain soaked me and lightning lit my escape. I ran aimlessly, just away from the school, away from the image of Taehyung who wasn't Taehyung, away from that smile reflected in the water. I only stopped when I saw the faint lights of the town in the distance. I collapsed on the side of the road, shaking uncontrollably from cold, fear, exhaustion. The rain mixed with the tears that finally began to fall, hot on my cold face. I went back to Korea the next day, made up some excuse about a family emergency. I never told anyone what really happened in that school. How could I? How could I explain that my best friend had been replaced, possessed? That maybe he hadn't even been there with me? The physical wounds healed, leaving only pale scars, but the others, the ones inside, those are still open. The trauma haunts me. I see that distorted face, that smile, in my nightmares. Any reflective surface, a mirror, a window, even a simple puddle of water, makes my heart race. I'm afraid to look and see, not my reflection, but that malevolent smile looking back at me. And Taehyung, the real Taehyung I suppose, he showed up a few days later, said he'd gotten lost, had a rough time, but didn't remember anything about the school. Our relationship has never been the same. I look at him, see my friend, the brother I love, but underneath, doubt gnaws at me. Was it all my hallucination? a product of extreme fear. Or did they return him, memory wiped? Or worse, can that thing still wear his face whenever it wants? I'll never know. The terror I experienced wasn't just fear of the dark or ghosts. It was the terror of reality unraveling, of trust being shattered, of the possibility that evil can hide behind the most familiar face. That trip to Japan, which started as an exciting adventure, left an invisible mark on me. A constant, cold reminder, and the question that haunts me every night in the silence. Who, or what, was really with me in that bathroom?
Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe, hit the like button and comment what you thought. Pick a link on the screen for more stories.